Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 25 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn Fusion 360 or you're going to die trying. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, take a look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's talk about what I am going to teach you today. Now, in this class, we have got some pretty good Fusion 360 skills under our belt. And so I'm spending a couple of lessons to work on improving our print skills. Now, in last week's lesson, I showed you the importance of having a clean, fresh, undamaged extruder nozzle, and I showed you how to exchange your nozzle. And that's a very important part of today's topic, which is how I get perfect 3D prints every time. Okay, but so part of it is certainly always starting with a good clean nozzle. But what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to show you the process that I go through on every single print before printing. Now, it's kind of like I used to be a woodworker, and it's like the old woodworker adage, measure twice, cut once. And sort of the analogy in the 3D printer world would be tune the printer in every time and then just print one time. Yes, it might take 5 or 10 minutes to do that tune in that I'm going to show you today. But what you gain is some of these things we're printing take 24 hours, 48 hours to print, and the problems don't always show up on the first level. But if we don't have that first level down perfectly, we can get the thing halfway printed, and then the stresses of the different temperatures across your vertical levels can put additional stress and can then lead to a lack of adhesion, can lead to your print peeling up. And it seems like the peeling up process usually happens in the middle of the night when you're not watching, and you come in the morning to find a bowl of spaghetti, an air print, you've got your nozzle completely clogged. Maybe the clog has even gone up and surrounded your hot end. You've got a very big mess. So believe me, I will promise you, if you do what I show you today, overall you will spend less time printing because your prints will work every time. Sound good? Okay, I hope so. And the things I'm showing you are not that hard. What I should say, though, is that the firmware that I am using, that I'm going to be demonstrating on, is the free firmware that I showed you how to install in lesson 22, the gyros firmware. Okay, now it'll be pretty much the same if you're using the stock firmware, but what I'm showing you is with the gyros, there's things that make it a little bit easier. So you can follow along even if you don't have it. But I would very strongly suggest going back to lesson 22 and getting yourself on the same firmware that I have. So what do I do to get a perfect print every time? Well, let's switch over here. Let me get out of your way. And the first thing that I will say is step one, every single time I start by cleaning the build plate. All right. Now, I know a lot of you like to use isopropyl alcohol, just kind of squirt the isopropyl alcohol on and wipe it down. That is an excellent way to do it. And the reason I like that way is because you don't have to take the print bed off. You can just clean it in place. For me, I don't have easy access to isopropyl alcohol. So what I use is a good grease cutting a dish detergent, you know, like where you wash the dishes by hand, something like Dawn, something that will cut through the grease. I'll take it into the kitchen. I'll put a little soap on it, and then I'll wash it down with the, with the rinse water. Make sure you get all the soap off. But what you're trying to do, whether you're using isopropyl alcohol or you're using something like Dawn soap, you're trying to get any little grease that is on the build plate off. And right, we're handling it with our hands, and our hands have a little bit of oil, and that oiliness can really very significantly affect print quality, affect print adhesion of the first layer. Now, as I'm bringing the print bed back to put back on the printer, I'm very careful not to reintroduce fingerprints. Now, the next thing I do is once I have it installed, I will just bring the print bed out, and I like to use one of these little microfiber cloths, and I keep the microfiber cloth either in a Ziploc bag or I keep it out of the dust, because as I'm de-dusting the print bed, I don't want to reintroduce the dust on it. So I will come in and I will just do one final dusting, and anything that might be on there dust-wise, I get off. So where are we now? We have a print bed that has no grease on it, a print bed that has no dust on it. That's a very good start. Now, the next thing I want to do, I want to make sure that my print nozzle is extruding well. Now, I explained in last week's video how important it is to always be using a fresh, clean extruder nozzle, and I change mine out every 10 or 15 prints. But what I want to show you is before every print, I check the nozzle. How do I do that? Well, I will come over and I will say prepare. And then with that, I will disable the stepper motor, and then I am going to manually bring the Z-axis up. And because what I want is I want a nice clear view. I want a nice clear view of the extruder nozzle. Okay, and let's get it up here like this. That should be pretty good. Now, you're going to have to bear with me. I'm going to take a second here to get my little webcam where you can see the extruder nozzle very clearly there. You can see I have a little bit of filament on it. I'll try to go ahead and get that off. And then what I need to see is I'm going to just take a second and focus the webcam. I cannot leave the webcam on autofocus because it doesn't work very well. So I would rather just tune this focus in right here. And I'm trying to give you a clear view of this little brass tip here. And I think that is pretty good, so I will leave it like that. Now what we're going to do is, let me see if I can come to this view where you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm starting at the home menu here, and with this Gyres firmware, I'm going to come over to prepare, and then I'm going to come down and I am going to go to preheat. Okay, so I'm on preheat, and I'm going to preheat it for PLA. Now what I am doing is I am warming the thing up where I can come in, and then I believe counterclockwise, if I'm thinking about it right, we'll push the filament down. And then I want to be looking and seeing at how the filament extrudes from the extruder nozzle. What I want to do is I want to see it coming perfectly straight down and not biasing one way or another, and not continuing to curl up and sort of stick itself to the extruder nozzle. Now, when you first get started, that first bit that comes out can go around and hook, but after you clear that, it should be coming more or less straight down. Now, once the filament hits the build plate, what will happen is then it will start coming out crooked, because it's like the filament column is kind of turning over, and also the fan can blow it a little bit. But if you look right up here, don't touch it, it's hot, right up here as it comes out, it should be looking like it is extruding straight down. And if it's continuing to curl up and going different directions or doing different things, then that's an indication to me that I might need a new extruder nozzle put on. Okay, we're getting close. We're up to 184. We'll give it another couple of seconds and then we will see if we can begin to feed through. Now, I think that you want to really be looking at the view above me, and you can see the filaments already starting to ooze out. So you can see that we're sort of up to temperature there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be watching that, and I am beginning to extrude. Sorry for that. Okay, and what I see is as I'm extruding, it is coming perfectly straight down. Do you see that? It is extruding perfectly straight down. It's not curling up at all. Now that's not a surprise because I just put a fresh extruder nozzle in the last lesson, and I haven't I haven't run anything through it, so we're dealing with a new nozzle here. So no big surprises. It's looking good. What you can see is the fan blows this a little bit, so if it looks like it's biasing one way, it could just be the fan. But if you look right at the nozzle, it should be coming down at that point straight out. And if you're seeing a whole lot of like that kind of business, now I made that happen because I force the filament through too quickly, but that is kind of simulating what happens if you have a partially clogged extruder, and then you'll get these types of little curls and stuff. And if you're getting that, absolutely change your extruder. So at this point, I feel confident. Or let's see, let me extrude a little more cleanly here. So I'm going to get a clean extrude. Okay, that is a nice clean piece there. And now I'm going to go back and I am going to cool down. Okay, so now I'm cooling down. I know there's a lot of people that disagree with me, but I don't like to level with a hot, I don't like to level with a hot end on. And the reason I don't like to do that is that there's a tendency for the filament to sort of seep down while you're doing that. So you've got filament that is kind of gumming things up as you're trying to level. So you don't want to burn your finger, but you can see this is kind of cooling. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of see if I can get that nozzle clean. One of the things that's very important is as you are leveling, you don't want a little glob of filament on the extruder, because that's going to affect what you consider to be the right offset. I'm going to glance under here, and that looks clean. It looks like it had cooled down enough that it's not dripping anything out. Now, don't lose your little piece of filament, because what I like to do now is I like to inspect the filament. Now, I am expecting to get a really nice looking piece of filament because I've got a brand new extruder. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the little USB microscope, and I've shown this to you guys. If you don't have one yet, there is a link down in the description to the one that I'm using. It is a dandy little microscope. If you guys can afford this, don't worry about it. Just do what I already showed you. But if you can get this little inspection tool, what you can do is you can come in and look at the filament. Let's see here. I need to make a little stand for this. Let's see here. Okay. I'm trying to look for the clean end, right? Remember, I was over extruding there. And so I need to find this was the part where I was extruding it the right amount. And then let's focus on that. And man, do you see how smooth those edges are? And do you see how round, like if I turn this, it's round. What you're looking for is little flakes or little like things where there's like little cuts in the filament, or little places where there's little cracks in the filament. But if you see here, it's perfectly smooth. There's no cracks. There's no flakes. I'm spinning it, and on all sides, it is very smooth and very round. So when I do metrology on this little piece of filament, I can see that my extruder nozzle looks good, everything's working properly. Another problem that could exist, like let's say you're not just checking the extruder nozzle. Another thing would be if you had over extruded. Let me bring this down a little bit. And sometimes you kind of get the filament jammed, and you can have a problem up here in your filament drive gear. And if that's gotten clogged up, it's not pushing the filament well. And when that happens, you will also see it when you inspect the little piece of filament. Now, I'm doing a lot of talking. In real life, when I do this, it goes very fast. All that I just showed you would take just a couple of minutes. Now, what I want to do is I want to level the bed, okay? And the bed leveling is going to occur in two stages. The first one is just old-fashioned. I want to get it level, right? I want it the right distance from the extruder. Then the second part of it is that manual compensation that we're going to do for the what seems like universal characteristic of the interprinter, and in fact probably a lot of printers. The bed itself is not flat. The bed itself, at least most of the ones I think on the Creality, tend to be kind of bowl-shaped. And what we're going to do is we can't mechanically fix that, but we can calibrate that out by setting up a mesh. And I showed you how to do that earlier, but I'll just go through it again. So let's go ahead now. So what do I know? I know I got a clean bed. I know that my filament is extruding well, and now the head, while I've been talking, has cooled down. So I'm going to go back, okay? I'm going to go to prepare, and then I am going to go to manual leveling, all right? And I just use a normal piece of paper. I don't use a business card. To me, a business card is a little bit too thick. And so we're going to let it come down and then find its home position. And I go through this pretty quickly. I'm not trying to go over and over and over and get it perfectly. So I'll go to the bottom left. I chose bottom left. Okay. And then here, I'll be using this one. And clockwise makes it tighter. Clockwise brings it closer. And I like to have it where I'm just beginning to feel resistance. Okay, I've got that. Now I'll go top left. Okay, that is a little tight. Just feeling some resistance there. That's good. Top right. Okay, that needs a little tighter. And a mistake that I just made, did you see when I was picking up the paper, I touched the, when I was picking up the paper, I touched the build plate? That's a no-no. After you've washed it, you don't want to touch the build plate. That's good. I'll come bottom right. Just feeling the resistance there. Okay, now on the center, it's probably going to be loose, but there's not too much I can do at this stage, because if the bed is not flat, you see, yeah, there's too much resistance there. Why? Because it's right on the outside and it's like this, and I would have to overcompensate to bring the build plate up so it was right in the center. I don't want to do that. We're going to take care of that by the manual mesh settings in the next step. Okay, now we have it level. We don't have it flat, we have it level. And basically the build plate is in the correct physical space. It's in the right physical location. Now, very important, don't touch the knobs. You leave the knobs alone now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back, okay, and then we're going to go back again, And then we're going to come down to this new setting of level. And that is the new setting that you get on your menu when you install the Gyrus software, firmware, as I showed you in lesson number 22. So you really do need to do that, because you can't do this step, this next step you can't do if you don't have that software. So now I'm going to click on level, okay, and what I want to do is I want to create a new mesh. So I'm going to create a new mesh. What it's going to do is it's going to come to this position, and now very important, don't touch the knob. Okay, do not touch the knob. But what I do is I come up and I can see that it's too loose now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to micro step down. Now, why am I micro stepping down? Well, what it is doing as I micro step down, it is learning where the bed is at this position. Okay, and again, I'm looking for just when I'm starting to feel that resistance, and I do. I didn't turn the knob. What is the printer doing? It's learning physically where this point is. Okay, it's learning physically where this point is for how my bed is. That feels good. I'm going to go to the next point. Okay, too loose, so I'm going to micro step down. Micro step up, back off a little bit. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next point. Now, of course, if you have the BL Touch, this is done automatically, but what I'm trying to show you is how well you print is a function of your skill, not how much money you have. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So we will be installing the BL Touch, but I don't want anybody to not be able to get exceptional prints because they have a limited budget. That feels perfect. Next position. Okay, it seems like it kind of starts far away because it probably doesn't know exactly where the build plate is going to be, so it doesn't want to be crashing into it. So it seems it always starts a little bit high. At least that's been my experience. Now you see, we're going to that center. Ah, that was horrible. At least I wasn't on that view. I just lost the webcam. Okay. Okay. Now we're in the center, and that's the part that we know is too low, and so it's going to learn that it's too low here, because I'm probably going to have to go a lot lower with the Z-axis to get it to be just right. Perfect. Okay, next point. Good news is we are over halfway through. You can just hold it down because I know that about where it's going to be. So then I'll go up, go down. Perfect. Okay, next point. And we're going to do this 9 times. And we're on number 7 out of 9, so we're almost there. Okay. That's perfect. We're going to go to point number 8. You can also come down and just go to the last position so you don't have to click as much. Okay, so then that should get me there quicker. Yeah. That's perfect. And we got one more. Perfect. Okay. Remember, in that step, we didn't touch the knobs. Once you do that initial leveling, you don't touch the knobs. You do the up, down. Okay. So now what is very important is we want to make sure that we save mesh. So what we just did, we want to save that. Okay. And that looks happy. So we'll go back. Okay. Now, in getting a perfect print every time, we are in very good progress to getting there. But what I need to tell you is that sometimes if I have a print, you know, what I've done is I've designed just a square this big, very thin square. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to print that very thin square. And what I'm going to do as I am printing that very thin square, I'm going to be, you know, on top of where the physical location of the bed is, and on top of the mesh, I'm now going to bring that whole thing up or down to put it to fine tune as I'm looking at it visually, to fine tune it as I am looking at it visually, to get it in absolutely the perfect space for having the first layer stick. Now there's kind of two different options that you have here. One option is whatever print you're doing, you just make this adjustment on that print. Or if the print that you're doing doesn't have a very large contact area, a very big first layer, you can just print this test print to do this final tuning in. Most of the time, I just do it based on whatever print I'm printing. I've made a big one here because it is a good test structure, and then also it allows me to show you what you are looking for. Does that make sense? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in now, and I am going to say print. Okay, and this is the file that's just the big square. I would suggest to you that you have this loaded, because it's always good to tune things in, to have it in case you really want to tune things in the way I'm doing it. Or like I say, for a lot of prints, you can just do it with whatever the live print is that you're doing. Now, as this is heating, I want you to see that you have a setting called Tune. And with Tune, what you can do is you can do a Z offset. Okay, you can do a Z offset. And what I've got to show you is like a positive number is bringing the extruder, bringing the hot end up. Negative is bringing the hot end down. And so it's going to start here at 0. But what I have to tell you is this doesn't live adjust as you move this. So nothing moves as I move this Z off up and down. What you have to do is you have to make the adjustment and click before it applies it. So you have to adjust, click, adjust, click, adjust, click. Well, now what am I going to be looking for? I'm going to be looking for getting that perfectly smooth, peanut butter smooth looking filament, on that first layer. And a lot of times what I try to do is I try to dial it in while it is doing the brim around the outside, right? While it's making that brim around the outside, I try to get it almost perfectly tuned in. But this is the step. The final step is you're visually tweaking it to get that layer looking perfect. Now you ask, what is perfect? Well, I'll be showing you as we go through this. But as we're waiting, I'm going to see if I can tune in. Okay, that will at least be a starting point. We can watch it from that camera. We can watch it from both cameras, and you can hopefully see what happens. I'm going to be having to stop and tweak this webcam as we're going so that you can clearly see what I'm talking about. We are up to 160, so just a couple more seconds. Have a little coffee here while we're waiting for the thing to heat up. So if you see like something that looks like this and little light spots or little lines between the ridges, you're too far away from the print bed. If it is very thin in the middle and then a ridge to the left, a ridge to the right, that means you're too close, and the filament is going down and then squeezing out. So you're putting it too close, and then it has to come out and go like that. So a perfect first layer, it shouldn't be high on the top and it shouldn't be high on the sides. It shouldn't be high on the top or it shouldn't be low. It should just be a perfectly smooth. So now I'm going to watch, and I'm going to be ready to start tuning as this thing is going. We're going to start with the smear layer here. Let me get that filament off of there. I ended up with a little bit of drag from being over there. Okay. Let's see if that's going down. Okay, that looked pretty good. Now we're making that skirt, and that skirt is much too close. It really looks too close to me. So my Z offset, I'm going to go up because I think that is too close. I go up by about 0.05 at a time. Okay. So you see right here where it printed, it was barely getting the filament out of the nozzle. Now this one is really looking pretty good now. Let's see. Do you see how that is really good? It might still be a little bit close, but I think that is looking pretty good for now. Now when that first when that first actual layer starts building the square, I'll fine tune it a little more, but I like what I'm seeing here. Can you guys see what that is? Like between the adjacent lines, I'm not seeing a gap and I'm not seeing like a ridge. And so I really, really like what I'm seeing. Okay, that looked clean. I'm not going to do an adjustment now. I think it might still be a little bit close, but I'm not going to adjust it until I see it going back and forth. Now with the second one, I can tell a lot better because with the second one now I'm looking at two lines side by side. Wow, so far that is looking really good. And you see, this level of tuning you can't get by just doing the first two steps. You have to look at it in real time and do that final little bit of tweaking. But you see how nicely that is going down and how nicely it is sticking. Wow, that looks really good. Like I say, if I was going to tweak, I think I might be a skosh too close. If you're OCD like I am, this is, you know, something you got to be careful to not overdo. Okay, you can't see it yet. We've got to wait a little while before we can really see what's going on there. I'm wondering if I can see it from the back side. I'm not. It's like the the print head itself. Okay, now we're going to be able to sort of start seeing it. Let's go ahead and switch over to the view of just the webcam, and then we might need to focus. Okay, remember how I said that I thought it might be a little bit too close? And do you see that it's starting to get little ripples and little flakes? That's meaning I am too close. Are you able to see that? Let's see if I can focus that camera just to help you see that a little bit better. There, that is pretty good on the focus. So do you see how there's those little wavies? That means I am too close. Well, it's good because it's going to stick, but let's go ahead and then I'm going to do the offset. I'm going to go ahead and take it up another 0.05 to 0.1. And then what I want to see is I want to see those little flakes that are coming up, like little pieces that look like they're kind of peeling up. I want to see if I can get rid of that. Okay, do you see how it's looking like that has become less or has stopped, that in these last few I'm not seeing those little tiny tiny flakes coming up? You see, I want to wait enough till I'm sure what I'm seeing. But man, I really think what I'm seeing now is, I think I'm seeing a clear layer emerge that doesn't have those on it. Now, in reality, at this point, what I would do is I would just let it run, because this is close enough. This is like really, really, really close to perfect. I see a tiny bit, so I think that I might still be a little bit close. So let's see if we take it up to 0.15, like that. And then I think at 0.15, I should see smooth layers going down that are not high in the middle, are not coming up with ridges along the outside, and are not generating those little flaky looking things. Yeah, you see how these last layers are really smooth, and even the ones that were at 0.1, there's just a little bit right there, just a little bit of that flaking up. But I'm thinking this is pretty close to perfect. So let's let it run for a little bit. Yeah. For any practical thing you're trying to do, at this point, it is perfect. Now, you've got several options at this point. What you could do is just go ahead and finish your print, or what you could do is you could stop the print and then you could restart it with excuse me, you could restart it with these perfect settings. Okay, but what I want to do is, I would consider this to be perfect, but what I want to do is I want to go on both sides of perfect, and then I want to let it go on, and then I want us to look at it after the first level is finished, and I want us to see what the different things look like that are on to the left or to the right of perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, just to see that, I'm going to come in, and from 0.15 I'm going to go up to 0.2, and then this then is going to be just a little bit too far away, is what my guess is going to be. Okay, now you see I'm seeing very distinct lines form. So what I can see is, I can see a line, and then I can see a little bit thin between the lines, meaning I'm getting a little bit too far away. That 0.15 was perfect. Does this make sense what I'm saying? How long does this take, given that you might be about to do a 24 or 48 hour print that's going to use half a roll of filament? And again, what you have to see is, you might get your first level down and it might not be peeling, but then you come in tomorrow and you see, or you see after a few hours that an edge has popped up as you start having thermal effects happen, and then you're just sitting there hoping the thing's going to finish without coming off, and then you're going to go to bed and you're going to come in the morning and you're going to have a big ugly mess under your printer. This what I'm seeing now, I think, would be acceptable. Okay, but I think the 0.15 was really sort of like exactly right. Are you guys going to go crazy if I just sit and let this whole thing finish? I hope you don't. Maybe we won't do the whole thing, but maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of get like, let it go halfway. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop. I'm going to peel it off and I'm going to put it under the microscope and show you what these different levels look like. So that's a good amount. What if we go up, and because I know that this is good and the last one was good, but what does it look like when you are too far away? So I'm going to go up by another 0.05, so I'm up by 0.25 now. Now your numbers might be completely different because it's going to depend on your, exactly how things were in those earlier two steps. So don't think 0.2 is the right answer. It'll be something completely different from you, but that's why we're visually looking at it. Okay, now I'm beginning to see very distinct lines emerge, and those lines aren't very well connecting because it's going like this and then a space and like this, and that space is very, very thin. We'll let it do 5 or 10. Yeah, I can very distinctly see that this is, this would print okay, but it's a little bit too far away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to go up another, so it's going to get worse here, because I want you to see. If you can see and recognize what is right, then you'll be able to do what? You'll be able to do it right. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing lines with gaps, and by gaps it is connected, but between this line and this line, the connecting part is too thin because I'm putting too much filament here and not enough is running down to fill the gap. Let's see if we can focus one more time here. There, I think maybe that shows it. Do you see how we're getting distinct ridges now as we're getting too far away? And I'm seeing distinct gaps between the lines. I'm going to go one more. So I'm going to 0.35 now. At 0.35, I think I'm actually seeing physical gaps between the lines, that the lines are getting to the point that they're not even connected. And believe me, at this point, you've probably got something that is not going to stick. I'm going to go up to 0.4. The thing to remember is this C offset, again, just as you spin the knob, you're telling it what you want, but it doesn't apply it till you press the button down, and you got to remember that. Yeah, I am pretty sure my lines are not connecting here. I'm going to go on up to 0.45. Why? Because I want you to see what things look like when it's not right. Is this like the most boring thing you've ever watched in your life? Or are you saying, wow, if I could master what he's teaching, I could have every print work every time. Now, normally when you're doing this, you're not going to do all that I'm doing here in this last step. You're going to dial it in and go, but I'm just going on both sides of perfect, so you'll see what it looks like on both sides of perfect, and you'll know which direction you need to go. Okay, I'm going to go up to 0.5. I'm kind of trying to get it to be ugly. Yeah, now the line is starting to kind of go like this, like it's not even maybe stuck down everywhere. You know, it's almost like it's air printing, and then the line is just kind of gravity laying down there. So that would definitely be all the way to something that wouldn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go back, and then I am going to stop the print. Let me give you this view again. Come back to this view, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the print. Okay, now I'm going to go over, and under prepare I'm going to disable the steppers, and then I'm going to pull this out. Let's see if I can get this webcam to show you a little bit better what is going on. I don't know, but don't worry, if this doesn't show well, we'll switch over to the microscope. Okay, yeah, do you see that over here on this side? Do you see how you have physical gaps between the lines? Okay, and then over in the corner on the other side, that top left corner, you see the little flaking. So we're going here in smooth increments from, from too close to too far away. Does that make sense? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel this off. I'm going to try to peel it off without damaging it. And the plate is still hot, so it's wanting to stick on there. So what would I say? This is too close. This is too far away. This is beautifully close, but do you see these little defects here and here and here, sort of like what we were seeing there? Okay, we're getting a little bit of that there. This is temptingly perfect, because I would rather be a little too close than a little too far away. But then what I would say is probably I think that it is this one that is perfect. Okay, do you see how I see lines on this one? Those lines are the ridges on either side of the nozzle, because it's pushing the filament out and it's going down and up. Okay, so these ridges that you are seeing on these ridges that you're seeing on this one is it's going, but it's going out and up because the filament has a place to go. Then do you see when you get to this one, you don't see any lines at all. Now the lines are starting to come back here and starting to get worse here. Why? Because you're too far away and you're creating a hump and then a thin layer and a hump and a thin layer. And so you're too far away. And here, then out here, you're not even connecting. Like you see, that did not even adhere to the build plate. So you can see that you might be able to get halfway through your print with this, but then any little thermal stress in the thing is going to start peeling up. And so really I would say this is the perfect one, or somewhere like around in here. I think this was 0.15 and this was 0.2. Your numbers would be completely different, but then that is getting pretty close to perfect. And let's see if we can peel this up without damaging it. Okay, we've got it here. And so now let's come over to the scope. You guys, if you can't afford one of these little USB microscopes, that's okay. You can just have fun watching me do it. But if you have the resources, I think you'll see how valuable this can be. So what I'm going to do is let's start over here. And over on this line, you can see wow, I wish I had a little something that would point. It's going to be very hard to point. But what you can see is it's low and a ridge, and it's low and a ridge. And what you can see, like here is the low part, and then here is the ridge. So the nozzle was here, and then you over extruded to the right of the nozzle, and you over extruded to the left of the nozzle. And then that leads to these defects where you have little whiskers that are beginning to come out. Clearly, we are too close. Let's see if I've really got good focus here. Yeah, that is good. Let me see if I can adjust my lighting. Okay, that you can see pretty clearly. You can see physically those ridges, like a ridge and a ridge. You are too close there, my friend. And now we're going to come out here. And do you see as we're coming this way, those ridges are becoming much less pronounced? And so here we very much have the ridge problem. And then as I'm coming out this way and I get to that next level, those ridges are becoming much, much less. Okay. And then when I get here, it's much smoother. And then let me come out to, let me see this area. I think kind of between this one and this one, you'll never make those ridges completely disappear, but you can see right along in here, I am pretty close to getting those ridges to disappear. Now, realistically, maybe if I fine-tuned it more, like the 0.15 was real good and the 0.2 was real good, maybe it was somewhere between 0.15 and 0.2, but that is really good. Now, as we come this way, we begin to see the ridges appearing again. Let me get it over here, maybe where I can point to it. But you can see here, now you're seeing ridges, but that's because there's a hump and a thin layer. And even probably over here, it was a hump and a thin layer. And now we're getting where that is a really thin layer. And at this point, I think what we're seeing is, let's see if we put something colored underneath. What you can see is you're actually seeing, you know, the card beneath it. And so you're not completely bridging those two lines. And then as we went further with that, you can see you're very much not bridging the lines, and you can see that they are even not, you know, not connected. All right. Now, this might look okay to you when you are on that first level looking at the bed, but then when we look at it under the microscope, we see that those layers are not connecting. And when that happens, you're going to get halfway through the print and the thing is not going to, the thing is going to come loose. And so like if I come right here, now I think what I can see is really it was about that 0.15 that was perfect here. It's almost good, but I can, with just a little force, I can break them apart. They were stuck, but I'm breaking them apart. And then if I come here, those are very well together. So that 0.15 was about perfect. You see, that's beautiful. Coming back closer, you can see that we're getting those defects. Am I just like going way overboard in the realm of things that you just don't care about? Or is this pretty neat? You see, it's pretty neat to me. And, you know, I made a pretty big claim that I can get a perfect 3D print every time. The battle of getting a perfect 3D print is won or lost on your first level. I like that first level, like if you're going to tune your Cura settings, I like that first level to go down slow, okay? And what I like is I would probably rather be a little too low and get some of this stuff than I would rather be too high and get this sort of stuff, okay? And with this sort of stuff, if you're trying to do something like print a small curvy object like a gear, you are not going to get this level to stick. And so again, right about here, somewhere in here was just about as close to perfect as you can get. So how do I get a perfect print every time? Well, let me ask this. How much did I spend on printer upgrades to get this? 0. This is what I'm getting off of the stock Ender 3 version 2 printer, and the only thing that I spent on was having a pack of extra nozzles, so I'm always starting with a really good, clean, and unclogged nozzle tip. The nozzle tips are about 50 cents, 75 cents each, so that is about as close to free as you're going to get. But I didn't go get the this and the this and the this and the this. What you guys are doing is you're trying to spend your way out of the problem, and you're never going to fix it that way. What you need to do is you need to develop good print skills, and then you don't need to spend all that money on upgrades. Now, I will admit the little thing that I did where I created the mesh manually, if you guys have the money, I'll show you in a future lesson how we can put that touch sensor so it will do that step automatically. But even with that, what we want to do is we want to wash the build plate every time. Even with the auto sensor, you want to start with manually getting the bed in the right position physically, and then that little bit of imperfection that is left is done by the mesh compensation. And if you have a little bit of money, then that you can do automatically. And then even if you do it automatically, you want to fine-tune that z-axis offset on the first level. Now with something that would be like this, a big large area, you can just do the test on your print and then get it dialed in and let it go. Or what you can do is you can print the test structure, get things dialed in, and then what you can do is you can stop the print, take it off, and then go directly and print what your real print is that might not have as much area as this. What I usually like to do is dial it in on the skirt. I like to dial it in on the skirt and let it go. So I usually don't have to run this print. I usually have enough to work with. And also, it goes a lot faster than it did for me because why? I was wanting to go on both sides of perfect. But you remember, I got to perfect in just a couple of minutes. And so it doesn't take very long to do this when you are doing it in a real situation. Guys, give me feedback. Am I just wasting your time? And all you want is the first level to spray a little hairspray on it and you're good to go. Or do you enjoy developing your print skills so that you don't need the hairspray, you don't need the $200 machine perfectly flat high-tech bed, but you can get excellent prints with the stock ender. Give me feedback if I'm wasting your time or if you really enjoy learning this type of stuff. Guys, I hope you're enjoying taking these lessons as much as I am making them. If you enjoyed the lesson, make sure to give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. When you do, make sure you ring that bell so you'll get notifications when my new lessons come out. And then it really helps me a lot if you share these videos with other people. Try to get more people interested in this because the world needs more people doing engineering and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.